In this video, I am going to talk about what technology stack I use as a freelance data scientist. Hey, my name is Pradeep and I'm full-time freelance data scientist. A lot of people have been asking me what technology stack I use as a freelancer, and in this particular video, I am going to break it down all for you. So first of all, before I get into the technologies and libraries I use, you need to understand what kind of work I do. Since I work as a freelancer, most of the time I get the work from a companies which are maybe the small companies or the startups who want to quickly build something. And most of my work, or I would say all the work what I do related to the natural language processing. So these two things kind of are going to influence the libraries that I use. For example, these companies are more interested to getting things done, make sure that we are going live as early as possible, right? And they are not much bothering about the overall architecture and the later scalability issue. That's not the most of the time the objective when they reach out to me to build something. So that could be the one of the reason the technology that I use might be influenced by that particular thing, right? So think of, like, first of all, the programming language. So we know that in data science the Python is dominating everything, so definitely almost all the things I do will be definitely in the Python programming language. But there are some cases where I use the other thing, like let's say uh, I am integrating some API into some different tool, and that tool could be the no code tool or any other tool which supports some scripting, and I found a lot of time they support JavaScript scripting into their code. So I might use some JavaScript, like, which is related to only some accessing some API and writing that output to some variable or displaying somewhere. So recently I also made one video that how to integrate I think how to integrate GPT-3 API into the Airtable. So Airtable is a spreadsheet database, a no-code tool, right? So there are certain occurrences where I also need to use the JavaScript to do certain tasks, but which will be very rarely. Also, not only the coding, I also came across certain use cases where I used to use the no code tool. So there is one popular tool called Bubble. So I will tell you, what are the occurrences where I might use Bubble to do a small task. And definitely SQL also. So a lot of time even I build a machine learning solution, but to build a full-fledged application it also required to create one data layer in the middle, right? Or some kind of a data model, and I need to create multiple tables, store that calculations, and then finally return that particular calculation related to let's say what are the problem statement I'm working. And that calculation need not to be some numerical value. It could be just like, I'm processing terms, some text, breaking it down, and then that final output I'm writing it to the database, and then I'm passing that output to, let's say, via API, so that some other party can consume it, right? So let's talk about the think of, like, since I work mostly in the natural language processing, the dealing with the text requires, cleaning that text, formatting. Sometimes I deal with the long documents. You need to split the document into the smaller chunks, right? So for all that kind of thing, I will be using a Spacy library. So the Spacy will be, something that is by default in almost every problem statement where I need to clean the text, right? And not only just the cleaning text, there are certain problem statement like NER, name entity recognition, right? Where we want to extract certain entities from the text. Now, for such a particular problem statement for NER, I will use Spacy because Spacy has a better architecture to, to leverage that NER thing. And even Spacy supports us to use the Hugging Face transformer library inside it, right? So Spacy is the one that I will be using. Other than spacing, the most popular and the most used library will be a Hugging Face transformer library. Now you might be wondering why not scikit-learn and all those things. Scikit-learn, lot of problem statement that I use nowadays in NLP. We rarely use the library, models from the scikit-learn. So scikit-learn I will be mostly using, for that kind of stuff. Maybe using some evaluation metrics from the scikit-learn, or splitting data validation, that kind of stuff, but not for using any machine learning algorithm. That I will be mostly using from, let's say, Hugging Face transformer. So the Hugging Face transformer is the default, thing that I will be using to build any machine learning model. So first of all, I will be checking, does any pre-trained model available in the Hugging Face? It could be anything, just for the sentiment analysis or sentiment analysis with particular domain. It could be finance, legal, or kind of thing, or it could be any other problem statement, whether it is summarization, question answering, anything. The first model that I might check is the Hugging Face transformer. And lot of time just using pre-trained model is not a sufficient, so you need to fine tune that particular model, right? So mostly it could be fine tuning for the test classification or for any other purpose. So that also, Hugging Face also provides their different, let's say Hugging Face trainer API, which allows us to create the fine tune transformer model for our use case. And you can, I think I have also created videos related to how to fine tune a transformer. And not only that, even lot of time, right? So you need to write some code around that transformer library, maybe your custom code for prediction or manipulating those whatever the predictions you got, right? So you have a choice, either you can use TensorFlow to include your transformer libraries, or a PyTorch. So my preferred choice is a PyTorch. I will be using PyTorch. Earlier I used to use PyTorch also for fine tuning the transformer model, but now I find the transformer trainer API, right? So though I call it API, it is just the part of library that makes it easy to fine tune the transformer model, and whatever the other stuff around it, I will be using PyTorch for it. So this is all about let's say the library specifically I use. And just like Spacy transformer, Hugging Face transformer, right? I will be also using a sentence transformer library, right? Now the sentence transformer library is especially useful for, let's say, calculating the embeddings for text, that can be used for, let's say, a semantic search kind of application. But the thing is that those sentence transformer libraries or those models are also available on Hugging Face, Model Hub, from where you can download those models. So the sentence transformer is the one used mostly for, let's say, embedding kind of thing. And think of like an application, right? Let's say I want to build a semantic search kind of application. Now, what I will be using, if it involves, let's say, longer documents, right, those need to be split into the paragraphs or the chunk, so that I can calculate the embedding. Then what I will be using Spacy to, let's say, create those, break down those longer documents into the smaller chunk. Then I will be taking those chunks and paragraph, and I will be using sentence transformer library to calculate the embeddings for them. And then you need some way to store those embeddings, right? Because you want to compare those embeddings so that you can find out what are the paragraphs are related to each other, what is their similarity score. Or sometimes you need to match certain query with all the documents that you have, so you need some way to store them, access them easily and more efficiently way. So there are some vector databases that you can use to store those embedding. I personally have used, let's say, Pinecone, which I access just like an API. And there is something called Quadrant also, that you can use at a vector database to store your vectors. So what this is how you will be using, right? So you will be using Spacy to break down those long documents, calculating embeddings, sentence transformer, which will be anyway using the transformer library, and then eventually some database to store those particular embeddings. Now this all things are good when you have at least some enough data from the client. Like if a client has, let's, few hundred examples, the kind of example that they want to fine tune model for their purpose. But the most of the time client will not have those even 100 examples from their side, right? And even creating those examples are costly. Then you need to take approach of few short learning. They might give you only 3 to 5 examples. This is what we need to do. It could be, let's say, a name entity recognition, and they have only 5 example. Hey, if this is the text, we want to extract this particular thing. For example, if this is a medical related or the healthcare related text, we want to extract certain these entities. If it is product information or something like that, I want to extract this thing. Now those are the cases where you don't have data, but they have a couple of examples. Then I will be using a models like GPT-3, a large language model like a GPT-3, because GPT-3 is able to do just with 3 to 5 examples, it is able to do a good job. And most of the times client might have example, but the available pre-trained model is not that good when it comes to, let's say, content generation, writing something, creating summary, or maybe a summary you might find still a good model. But let's say you want to write a ad copy, you want to write a outline for your blog post. Now the other open source models are not that good, right? So this is where you go for models like GPT-3, which is very powerful. Now once we have these different libraries and models that used for the specific use cases, then how do I make it available for a client or someone to use it? So what happens when I'm building those applications for the client, and during the process of development we need some way to get feedback from the client, or so that they can test it quickly. Let's say it could be anything. I build, let's say, a some kind of um, some type of, let's say, text generation model using GPT-3, or either it is name entity recognition or a classification model, whatever the model it could be. If I want to make it available from them to test, I will be using a Streamlit library. So Streamlit is an open source library using which you can create some kind of web application, which using which you can add your, let's say, machine learning model into it, and someone can use it like that. That's what you, most of the demos that you see on online or on a YouTube video, they are using this Streamlit library. So I will be using that library during the development phase to to get the feedback from the client. But as soon as the work is done, definitely no one is going to use that. They want that to be available as a service, so that the other developers, or maybe the other tool, it could be in front end developed using React.js, or it could be a no code tool, whatever, they want to consume the machine learning model or the API that you have created. So I will be exposing it as API. So what libraries I use, to create APIs? Ultimately, I want to host or make it available, the kind of application I have built, to the client or maybe the other services who are going to consume it. So in the Python, to create API, we have a couple of choices, right? The popular choices in machine learning community is using, let's say, Flask, which is old, and a lot of people are already familiar with the Flask. The other thing is a Fast API, which is new compared to Flask and much more powerful than the Flask. And you can also create APIs using a serverless architecture. Like for example, we can create it in AWS Lambda and API gateway. So API gateway will act like your route or API, and the AWS Lambda will act like your Python logic or the backend that you can put. So my preferred choice is actually use AWS Lambda and API gateway, which makes it very easy to build. I could easily use the other services that I want to use from the AWS. And if a client don't have any particular preferences, right, so that will be the my default choice. It is scalable, it is cost effective. Even you can create some kind of subscription model inside this AWS Lambda and API gateway, right? You can create certain API keys, and you can say, okay, this keys can only access, let's say, 5,000 requests, something like that. You can create in AWS Lambda. When I say client don't have any particular preferences, because sometimes they do have a preference. For example, the client already has one development team, and they are quite familiar with the, let's say, Flask or Fast API. In that case, I will be using the kind of preferences they have. So this is all about, I think we talk about the libraries I use for, let's say, building machine learning model, like Spacy for NER, for all other machine learning problem statement, let's say Hugging Face transformer, sentence transformer, and then the problem statement, like, let's say, a conversational AI. Now I have also work on the chatbot building. Now I have exposure with, let's say, there is a service called Google Dialogflow. This is from the Google. And then we have Amazon Lakes from the AWS or from Amazon, and there is open source alternative also called Rasa, which is conversational AI building framework. So I couldn't much explore the dialog flow because I usually prefer AWS for all my activities, and that is the reason I use AWS. I could use a lot of other things, right? Maybe I could use the AWS Lambda as a backend for my chatbot, which can handle certain things. For example, when do you need a backend for your chatbot? Let's say you build chatbot for something like hotel booking use case, right? So all the conversational aspect will be handled by, let's say, bot. But let's say when user confirm that they want to book hotel and they have given you all the detail, you need to make entry in database, you want to make some logic, you might want to call some third party API, right? That all things you can handle as a chatbot backend, and I will be using, let's say, AWS Lambda for that. And again, I have created video on that how to create conversational AI or chatbot using AWS Lambda and Amazon Lex kind of thing. There is also open source alternatives Rasa. I have used that Rasa for one project. What I found actually, the when you get stuck at something, right? You are building those chatbot using this open source framework. When you get stuck at something, there are very less help available. There are not a lot of articles available which are updated, because even even after, if there is an article or a blog which is available which is 1 year old, which is not helpful because there is a lot of syntax has been changed, and this library version affect a lot of things. So that's what I observed with the Rasa. When I stuck at something, it's really hard to get any help. So decided not to use it till the point I see that it has better community and resources are available. And I'm also going to explore now other things. Like there is a lot of things available in the context of even the language models like GPT. There are many alternatives available. There are even open source alternatives, right? So I have used. alternatives like GPT-J or a GPT-J version. And then I have also used a model called OPT from Facebook, which is I think 20 or 30 billion parameter model. But the kind of use case that I had, I think it is related to, let's say, text generation, let's say writing email, or maybe generating some description for something. Those use cases I found GPT-3 was doing way better than those open source models. Sometimes they produce some garbage, and client also prefer to rather pay GPT-3 and get it done. But I will tell you many times what happens. So we use this large language model for some of the tasks which even you can solve with open source model, let's say like a name entity recognition or a text classification model. We go for the GPT-3 because you don't have the training data available. You don't have even couple of hundred or 100 examples that you can fine tune a model like transformer model, or not a sentence transformer, let's say Hugging Face transformer model. But what happens, you take those 3 to 5 examples and you use GPT-3 to do that kind of thing. But then when GPT-3 start doing those predictions, you're going to store those GPT prediction in your database or whatever the storage you have. And eventually when you have a quality examples from GPT-3, you can take those few hundred examples that you generated from GPT prediction and then use it as a training data to train your own open source model. Like let's say if it is name entity recognition or text classification, you can use a transformer or a Spacy, and you compare. The moment you get your open source model as good as, let's say, GPT-3 model, you will stop using GPT-3 and you can totally move to your open source, right? So many of the time I have worked with a client where we move from GPT-3 to open source alternative once we have enough data and the quality is good. So this is also one of the quite, this should be your approach. You should use GPT-3 to leverage and create the training data so that you can train your own open source model which solve that particular problem. So that is something also you can do. So these are all things. I think we talk about Python as a default programming language. JavaScript I use because some places I need to write a script and it only supports JavaScript. SQL I will be using because sometimes I need to create an intermediate data model because the application that I'm working, it needs to be do a lot of data manipulation, store into the multiple tables so that I can expose that final output to the, let's say, the API or the other services that are using it. So definitely SQL I will be using. For database, I go and use, let's say, relational database service or RDS, Amazon RDS from AWS, and I can use either MySQL or PostgreSQL, whatever choice I can make. And as I told you earlier, also the kind of thing I use or the things I prefer are actually influenced by the kind of work I do. So, since a lot of things I do related to natural language processing for the small companies, right? They are more concerned about getting this the building stuff, making it live rather than thinking about architecture and all these things. Yeah, there are some cases where we work on architecture, right, where we need a database, good API structure, whether it is scalable and all. But that's not the first thing when you work as a freelancer. That's not the expectation when you work as a freelancer. But yeah, if someone is hiring me as a freelancer so that they want to bring my expertise into their team, for example, I do as a consultancy, or do a minimal actual hands-on but rather working with the client where they have existing system and they want to make it much more better, right? There I suggest the architectural changes because that's what experience I had. I work as a lead and have experience with the MLOps also to build an end-to-end system. So there I will talk about what models to use, how to structure the how to create APIs, how to store the model prediction, how to use those predictions to train your models again, how to deploy them automatically, and all the MLOps life cycle. That will I will do when there is such a expectation. Else most of the time it is quickly getting things done, and that's what I do. I hope you found this video useful to got some glimpse, right, to kind of the things I use or might have some kind of expectation. Okay, this is kind of things you will be doing and these are the things that you will be using. Let me know into the comment if you use a different technologies for the same thing that what I do, and let me know, what is your thought process that you choose one thing over the other. And if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe, and also let me know, do you have any suggestions for me for creating the next video. Thank you.